What was the club back then?
There were a whole bunch.
Which ones were your favorite though?
Alaskan, Jet Set, Dog Out, Imperial, Trevino's for sure.
Yeah. That was kind of like the nice, swanky, affordable place. The little.
And then we'd started out with dinner with the parents at La Cucaracha, of course.
Okay, yeah, that was classic.
Yeah.
Fogata was a big one, I think,
Fogata
too.
was, so I did prom at Fogata.
Oh, yes, as many people did, right? That was the
yeah.
fancy place that you go and you spend $20. And
It was awesome every single time, for sure.
did you ever go to La Mansión?
La Mansión, for sure.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was a good one. So
I mean, I don't remember ever being in some place with as white a walls as La Mansión.
That's what I remember
and
too.
You felt like you were royalty,
right?
Yeah,
that's a sense of customer service.
Yeah.
I think that I have not experienced in this area.
Fogata
comes close.
Another level,
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, yeah. It was like 6 people would come in, and everybody would deliver all the food like all at one time, right?
The service was top notch for sure.
Yeah, that's definitely a place that
it is a loss that we don't have that, and the fact that that my kids growing up in the same place haven't had that same experience that I got to have as a kid kills me. But it's a different time.
It is much different time. You know, sometimes I wish that somebody would make a movie about that era.
So funny story. You say a movie. This is a book, but there was a friend that we had. You're quite a bit younger than I am, but there was a guy named Ricky Roo that I grew up with, whose family owned some of the places across the border that all of us visited as kids and students and then as young adults. And I mean, he was great at promoting and running the clubs, but he wrote a book.
I heard about this book.
He actually has a book out that he's promoting, and I haven't read it yet, but I have it on order. And I think it's dynamite because from what I've heard from those that already have read it and have reported on it, it's kind of like a history of everything that we went through as kids going on back and forth across the border and the experiences that we had in Reynosa and how his life has transformed and changed, and he's kind of grown out of that time period and now has a completely different outlook. And I'm looking forward to reading it. I think it's a period piece where, it's a place in time, but then an evolution where we can appreciate the transformation that goes on for all of us from what we were into, productive members of society and growing out of it and all the positive experiences that we got from those times and how they can benefit us as young and not so young adults, and then raising our own kids.
Right. Yeah. How much different have you changed as an individual since like those Mexico days?
So I feel like I'm the same person, actually, right?
Deep down inside.
Deep down, I am the same person. And I think it's one of my traits. I'm very consistent. And I've always been about the friends I've had surrounding me and the support structure that not only I started out with, but that I've created and been able to grow into and build upon. I'm not sure how it's happened, but every place I've been, I've lived in a lot of different places. Everywhere I've been able to have, I feel like, the greatest friends. And I don't know how that happens. You fall into it a little bit, but I think there's always, right, you slough off those that aren't true friends, and you build closer ties with the people that prove themselves to be true friends, and you give and take, right? And you have to be there for your friends as much as they're there for you.
Right.
And it's gotta be a synergy that works for everybody, where you can get together with people every single day and always have something new to talk about. And in good times and bad times, be there to support each other and to lift each other up and make each other's lives better, not just in productive, work environments.
Right, transactional type of situations.
But in just pure social, regular living.
Right.
Just quality of life, trials, tribulations of normal life activities that we all go through, because most of us are living very similar lives, right?
I would say so, especially in the Valley.
Yeah, well, it's the same all over, right? The differences might be pushing boundaries if you're in a big city versus a small town, cosmopolitan versus rural, but ultimately we are living very similar lives, and what it boils down to is the connections that we make and the relationships that we form. And how do we support each other? Because so much in life is really just about those relationships. You might have great success in business or failures because you try over and over again, and to the best of your ability you give it a go and it just doesn't work out. But ultimately, the friends that are there and the family that you have behind you to support you, that give and take is, I think, just ultimately where it's at. And that is where the real value in life is.
Do you think that's where happiness lies?
I do think it's where happiness lies. And I go back to the family that I had that just supported me, and I'm so thankful for all of that. My parents were great role models. My sister was a great influence in my life. Those were great. That was a great, and my friends growing up were just dynamite, and I could depend on them. And I wanted to have all those, whatever experiences I had as a kid before I went off to college, and then into the professional life, because those were always going to be my true friends. But one of the things that I think I've just really been, fallen into, luck or otherwise, is falling into a group of friends in whatever situation I've been in whichever city or state that I've lived in. Somehow I've fallen into just a great group of people that have supported me and that I've been able to support, and then the family life that I've been able to have. Both when I was growing up, my parents are just dynamite, and they were always community involved, and they loved my sister and me both, and gave us the freedom to express ourselves and to have new experiences, which was dynamite, because you always saw some people where they didn't necessarily have the home life where they had the opportunity to experience new things and had expectations put on them. But in my family, we had the opportunity to try new things and to succeed and fail, and it was always going to be based essentially on our ability to push forward and to make our own path, and to be given the free rein to expand our wings and really have success. And if we had setbacks, well, you learn from that. Right. And how wonderful is that? And then, I was lucky enough to marry a woman that was a strong woman who had all her own stuff going on, and we'd support each other. And she had great success in her professional life, and then, and she sacrificed some because we were raising a family. She stepped away from a career path that.
And what did she do?
So she was. So I went to Texas for law school.
Nice.
She graduated from UT undergrad, and I had an opportunity after graduating law school to go out west and take a job with a big firm, and so. She already had a dynamite job at a big advertising agency in Dallas, and went to Arizona And I took a.
And you all were together at this point?
We were, and then we got married shortly thereafter while we were out in Arizona. But I was working at a big firm, and she was working as a marketing executive for a healthcare company. And I would, we would support each other there, and she had a great time and a great job. And one of her responsibilities was helping set up for spring training with the Chicago Cubs,
nice.
Which was one of the ball clubs that her healthcare company was a sponsor of. So we got to go to Chicago Cubs spring training games all the time, and that was just wonderful.
That's awesome.
And then moved here to McAllen, which was a huge change. And she
is she originally from here?
She is from Tulsa.
Okay.
Great, wonderful parents and a sister there in Tulsa, and my kids have first cousins in Tulsa now. Great family, great relationships.
And y'all met in college?
We did. We actually met quite a bit earlier,
okay.
But we got serious in college, and that's where we started really dating, and the rest of that
is
part
history,
is history.
As they say.
We came back here, and I started working. The reason we moved was to kind of develop a new set of company experiences and take advantage of opportunities that we thought were available in Texas. My dad and his partners had an opportunity in Austin, actually, that was going to just be another level, and needed somebody that was going to drive that development, and then we'll just see what happens. And so we did that. We came here, and she had already been in the healthcare sphere, and so she took a job at one of the hospitals in the marketing department and did wonderfully there, and then became the marketing director at La Plaza Mall.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So after my development in Austin happened, and that was a success, when we kind of went to the next phase, she was actually the higher profile person as the marketing director at La Plaza Mall. And I got to meet so many people actually through her involvement in the city, and I can still remember the switch over from 1999. This is going back a ways, right? We're talking history here, but
this is a 20.
Yeah, this is old. This is old. This
years ago.
is old history, but it was neat. It was like, right, the world's going to come to an end at 1999 on the switch over to the Y2K. And so she was the marketing director at La Plaza Mall, and she would tell me, and I've got to get together with the police chief and dealing with the city and the hospitals, because there was concern that the electricity was going to go down, and what are we going to do with all those in the hospital that are dependent on ventilators and other electricity supporting equipment. So they were off in a bunker, trying to make sure that the world doesn't collapse on the Y2K. And I for that short period of time, I got to take the back seat, and she was the high profile person, and she's brilliant and does a great job. And but then we had kids, and she took a step back to raise our family, and thank goodness that she did, because we've got two wonderful kids.
How old are they?
Yeah, so my daughter is a senior. My son is a sophomore. This is just
senior at Mac High.
This is such a weird time, right? Running for mayor at the very same time with the very same deadlines. Election day is May 1st. It's the same exact day, May 1st, that my daughter actually has to make a decision on where she's going to spend the next 4 years in college. And she's a great student and has had a great experience at Mac High, and she has a number of options, thankfully, and she's worked hard for those options. But they're out in California looking at schools. We've got stuff in Texas and Louisiana, and hopefully she's going to make the right decision. But we're just trying to support her. I'm just saying it's just kind of a weird time. Unfortunately, those timelines converge, and so my wife is there supporting my daughter as she's trying to make that decision, and I'm focusing on the mayoral race, and missing out a little bit on that experience. But both my wife and my daughter are great about sending the links for FaceTime and other webinars that we get from the various colleges, and it's just one of those things. It can't be avoided.
So they just try to incorporate you, involve you as much as they possibly can under the circumstances.
Yeah, and then maybe turn me off when I'm saying stuff that they don't want to hear.
Right? They're like, Dad, yeah. So do you want her? Personally, would you want her to lean a specific way? Because it sounds like she's got a lot of opportunities.
My entire family went to UT. We're all Longhorns, and so there's a little bit of that. But really, we just want what's best for her. And there's actually a couple of universities that look like they might be fantastic landing spots that aren't UT based, and I think that would be tremendous also. And really, she's earned the right to go wherever she wants to go, and hopefully she'll make the right decision. But even if it isn't, whatever it is will be a great experience. And I went off to school. I thought that was great. I got a whole different experience. And there's value in those new experiences. And for anyone that is lucky enough to be able to take advantage of that, I would certainly encourage it.
Yeah, I mean, to be able to have those opportunities. There was something that I read or heard or something. I don't. To be honest, I don't read books. I just listen to them. So I always get these little tidbits of information, little slices of information, and one of them was a lot of the success that happens in your life is really based off of, more than anything else, good decision making. Yes, there's luck that's involved in a lot of the quote unquote success, and success can be defined in multiple ways, but is about those good decisions. And there's always those pivotal moments in life where you got to make one of those decisions, and you're just hoping that it's the good one.
Yeah. So, I'm all in favor of taking risks. So even if it's not the right decision, the ability to take those risks and to put yourself in a position where you're not taking the safe path, I'm all in favor of it. Even if it doesn't end up being the right decision when you're looking back on it and you're just like, why did I decide that? I think there's value in the path that you take. And there's very few things that you can't come back from.
Right.
And the ability to take, the path less traveled.
They always say that is a big thing.
And I'm fully in favor of that. And I think it's great. And you mentioned the book that you read, and right, we all read books in our formative years where you get that experience and that thought in your mind. And I have so many that made marks on me. And but ultimately, you try to just make sure that if you have the ability, give your kids the opportunity to express themselves, have new experiences, and that's the way that they get the experience and the exposure, and ultimately can benefit their growth, but benefit the world as well, and benefit their society. Because if you don't understand kind of what's going on and have experiences where you get to see how other people are living and what is going on in a community that is not your own and is not your own experience, but that you get for whatever period of time some exposure into.
Yeah.
How wonderful is that? Because all of a sudden, you're
now you're exposed to this brand new way of thinking, or this brand new way
that you otherwise wouldn't have had. And it allows you to expand your mind, to think about solutions that you otherwise wouldn't have had for problems that you're facing, your community's facing, that your family's going through, whatever it is. The ability to open up and feel like you've got experiences that are beyond what you otherwise would have had just in front of you,
right?
I think is just dynamite.
Yeah, I mean that's an amazing takeaway, because like you said, it sounded like your parents were very supportive, even when you didn't make the right decision, or even when you tried something and failed. I think that those failures that happen in life, some of those things are might be direct. Some of those things are very indirect and beyond your control. A lot of things I think that happen in life are indirect and beyond your control that you would consider a failure.
So a lot of it, so I did very well in school, and so they knew that I was going to make my way kind of regardless, and so they gave me a wide berth, and I'm very thankful for that wide berth. And I try to have the same outlook with my kids because they're just wonderful kids, and they've proven themselves, and they're working incredibly hard and doing really well in school, and so I feel like they've earned the right the same way I earned the right to set a path. And if I wanted to do something that was a little unconventional and not just go to the local expected university, then great.
So be it. Yeah.
So be it. But ultimately, right, you've got to work hard, and you have to buckle down, and you've got to prove up that you understand what is important and what is extraneous. And I think that, like my parents did, my wife and I have expressed to our kids that there is the requirement to do as well as you can, and then ultimately you're going to pursue a path, and you have to then give back, because you got to understand that what you're getting out of the society, you got to figure out how to then take those lessons, take that approach, and be in a position then to give back to it.
Right.
We've been here. My family's been here in town for 90 plus years. It has always been the case that the expectation is that we were going to do not just our part, but we're going to pick other people's parts up, and we're going to give as much as we can to our community, and you're going to be as involved as you absolutely can. We've been lucky to be where we are, and we're going to make, hopefully, wherever we land, a better place than we found it. And we try to communicate that, the volunteering, the stress on improving other people's lives, focusing on your own for sure, make sure you have what you need, but then we ought to be able to make other people's lives better at the same time that we're making our own path.
Right.
And we try to communicate that out, and I feel like we probably have.
Yeah, I think that when you get to a place where you're fortunate enough to be able to give back, you absolutely should in some way, shape, or form, right? Whether it's financially, some people can do it financially, some people can give of their time, which in both instances are very noble causes. And yeah, I think we you do as a member of the community, and with all of the businesses that you and your family have and have had, and all of those things. I mean, you're definitely a big part of McAllen. And so you said that your family's been here for 90.
So one of the great things, let me interrupt a little bit. One of the great things about running for office here, which I had never had an inclination to do.
Yeah.
Prior to this time, and I jumped in just because I thought it was an important time, and I had something to offer, and I felt like I was in the best position to push the city forward. Might be selfish on my part, but I just feel like
You've
I
never
have
been a
something to
selfish
give
guy.
back. I understand, but I wanted to. I'm not getting anything out of this race, so I appreciate you saying that, but. I feel like I can help the city push forward. But one of the great things, because it's incredibly difficult running for office,
I can't even
it's
imagine.
taking away from so many other obligations that that I've got going. But one of the great things is having the number of employees that come back, because we've had, thousands and thousands of employees, and we've had up to 500 or 600 at a time. But that those people come back out and say, "Oh my God, I'm so happy that you're running, and what can I do to help make it happen?" And it's both current employees and past employees, and then even beyond that, the number of people that worked for my parents We had a store downtown, Mike's Man Shop.
That was y'all?
214 South Main. The number is ingrained in my head because I listed it all the time, and every time I'd go to work, 214 South Main. That's where I was always going, weekends and some summers and. But these were right. I was this little nothing kid trying to just help mom and dad, and we had these great long-term employees that were working incredibly hard, and I would come in and just be around, and I'm sure I was a pain, and but they would be supportive, and they would show me kind of how to talk to a customer and how to ring up a sale and how to work the register, which is easy enough easy enough in dollars, not so easy in pesos.
Wait, how old were you?
Yeah, so I think I started really around 12 or 14, somewhere along that time. And my Spanish was okay.
Más o menos.
Yeah, but it got really good really fast.
Uh-huh.
And but still, making change in pesos is different than making change in dollars. But the ability to connect, and this was the time, because this was back in the 80s, mid to early 80s, early to mid 80s. I'm sorry, and when downtown was just kind of the dominant force in McAllen, and we had a fairly prominent spot in the second block from Business 83 on Main Street, and it was just a wonderful time, and it would just be neat. Right? You'd start early in the morning, and then lunchtime would come, and I'd get to meet my dad and Alter Holland and Jan Klink and the other business owners and Massos that were always fixtures in downtown. We'd go to there was the kind of the original Coco's that was down there, and we'd take a break for lunch, and just a wonderful time. And I would just sit back and just kind of listen to the stories, and it was just a neat time. And there was so much business that was going on, and then at the end of the day, we'd see what the register would say, and you kind of recap and get together with the employees before everybody would then go home. But it was just a neat time, and it was just because I would come in and out, right? All these employees, my dad and all these employees were there day in, day out. I was coming in and out and just kind of an interloper, but trying to do my part. And but it was an entry into kind of small business and how the economy worked, and so different that I'm sure than anything else around the country that was going on, because this was, we're on the border, and you got, the Mexican nationals that are coming across and just spending enormous amounts of money in our community, thankfully, and then having the locals that would come in, and right now it's a very different business model between the local business community and the Mexican nationals that were coming in. And it was just neat to see, and I'm sure it was just such a different experience than anyone else around the country got to have. And again, I was just a very tiny part of this, because most of the time I was just focused on school and sports and being a regular kid. But that experience, I think, was formative, and I got so much out of it, and thankfully I did, because I didn't know that I would be moving back to McAllen and being integrated into the community and involved in so many different organizations, and but I had that to fall back on, and I could always connect, I feel like, with people, because I had those experiences and the ability, not just experiences, but the ability to communicate just from a language level, and I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, McAllen is definitely very much in its own space, and you really don't know all of the things that you've talked about so far, like the family, the support, if if McAllen is anything, it's really all about the people and all of the people who have had the vision to be able to drive a lot of these things forward, take those risks, and do things that were non-conventional to be able to drive the city forward to where it is. Because when you look at McAllen as a whole, in the geographic space, I mean, yeah, we're in a border town, but we're not right at the border. You know, there's no port. There's no, you know, it's just any.
There's no port, but and we're so far geographically from, you know, Austin, where the government is located, and Houston, Dallas, where, you know, the majority of business happens in the state. But we're a land port, and we're one of the largest land ports, you know, in the country. And thank goodness that we've got MEDC and the free trade zone, because it has transformed our local economy. And I think that sometimes gets lost, that we are, you know, along with Laredo, which is just, I mean, kicking it, you know, booming. And the infrastructure that they have in place is just so impressive. And this is an aside, but we need to continue communicating with our state and federal reps to make sure that we're getting access to enough transportation dollars to keep improving our infrastructure. Because I mean, you know, Laredo is the single largest land port in the U.S.
Is it really?
And
I didn't know that.
We're a fair amount behind Laredo. We need to make sure that we're getting enough transportation dollars to increase our infrastructure, because we shouldn't be that far behind, and we are. But we have enormous opportunities to increase that business, to increase the bridge revenues, to increase the number of people coming across in our border bridges, to improve to increase the amount of business that is transacted here locally. But it is a model. We need to make sure that we're getting our dollars. That was just an aside.
Yeah.
But we're just a huge land port, and it just kind of gets lost in the shuffle sometimes, because, you know, we're 300 miles from Austin, where decisions are made on, you know, at the state capital regarding who's getting what transportation dollars, and certainly from Washington D.C., which is you know, assigns the federal dollars for the federal ports of entry. But we need to be on tables yelling and screaming and saying we need our dollars. We're driving the business that is so important for the entire country, because that is the reason those interstates are growing
as big as they are.
Yeah, because we have so much coming across our borders that are then going to all parts of our nation and all the way north to Canada. Well, it starts here on our border, and we're the ones having to deal with the difficulties. You need to be funding us, and so often we're not getting the dollars that
fair share.
Our fair share. Thank you. That's exactly right.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I mean, there's so many different facets to McAllen that kind of drive the economy. Definitely, you know, our friends across the border in Mexico are a huge part of it. But I mean, what are some of the things that you feel are like we're not really quite hitting, other than transportation?
Yeah, so there's been a transition that's gone on over the last few years, where international travel, international trade has moved a little bit kind of to, you know, the Asian countries, where they've taken such a hold on the manufacturing side. And I think that is really where our opportunity lies. I mean, if you think about it, we are now in the prime position to take advantage most of anyone almost in the world. And I'm just so excited about that opportunity, because I feel like if you put me into office, just get me in front of a company, I don't care where it is, and I'm going to talk about why they need to be here, because with the new USMCA that's replacing, we're getting a little technical here, but
go for it.
Okay, so with the new USMCA trade treaty between the U.S., Canada, and
Oh,
Mexico,
right, yeah.
that replaced NAFTA,
NAFTA.
and the new requirements that involve increased requirements for manufacturing components in the U.S. as opposed to elsewhere. And then on top of that, somewhat because of the pandemic, but otherwise just because of what's happened with storms and otherwise, the just-in-time manufacturing processes. It used to be that it didn't matter if stuff was coming from China and it was an extra week or two to cross the ocean in order to get here. But the just-in-time manufacturing process with the pandemic difficulties has lengthened that time period and is really affecting businesses. And it should be because of the manufacturing process, in addition to the new USMCA, every single company in the world should be locating right in the valley. I mean, we can service the entire central part of the United States, but we're also on the border and such easy access to the manufacturing that's already in place in Reynosa. And the logistics are such that we ought to be able to have those companies locate here because they can service not just the U.S., but then into Central and South America. I know I sound like a homer on this about
Well,
it.
you kind of should be if you're running for mayor.
I think that we are just absolutely in the prime position where every company should want to be here. And I just feel like just get me in front of those companies and let me talk through it. And let me talk through about how we've got this young, dynamic, bilingual workforce that is just capable of transforming any company's business because they're going to be so much more qualified. And thank goodness that, over the last 10 years, our local school districts and STC and UTRGV have started to really cater programs to train our young workforce to be work ready for these new companies that are located wherever they are. They could come here and the manufacturing process can be handled here locally. And we just have, I think, because also Texas is just a low-cost state, all of those factors mean that we should be bringing those companies in. And we should be bringing in the capital investment. We should be bringing in the new level of jobs, setting career paths for all our young people here, for older citizens that are transitioning from jobs that no longer exist into jobs that are new to everybody. But both those that are on a shorter career path and those that are just starting careers that can then move up within a company structure, we should be the location of choice. And we're not, we're just there's something where we haven't yet gotten to where we're converting the opportunity into actual relocations. And we need to make sure that's happened. And I just am so excited and looking forward to working with the Chamber and working with MEDC and working with our partners in Reynosa and with our neighbors in Mission and Edinburgh and FAR and those representatives, and making sure and yelling and screaming that we have access to state enterprise funds that can commit incentive dollars to bring in companies to locate here, because we should be getting those state enterprise incentive dollars just like Dallas and Houston and Austin and San Antonio do. We should be getting just as many dollars here. And I'm just so excited about that potential opportunity and to increase the quality of life that new career paths, new jobs, new companies and capital investment can drive into our local economy. And
because it trickles down, right?
Yeah, oh my God, the difference that you can make in people's lives, not just for the employee that might set a new career path, but for their younger brother or sister that all of a sudden realize that more is possible. And, and sometimes we all know here we've got multi-generational households where the young people are there to help support the generation above them and the second generation above them that helped raise them. But now there's obligations at home. But to be able to put that in place where all of a sudden you've got this new level of hope because we have all this new economic activity, which we didn't have before, that's what drives me, and that's what I'm excited about. And I just feel, I'm a real estate developer as my trade. I'm a lawyer, but I don't practice. I'm a real estate developer. I'm already out there recruiting companies to come down because I'm doing that for my own businesses. But that's neither here nor there. I'm just saying I have those relationships where if I then have the ability as the mayor to get in front of those influencers and those stakeholders and the ability to then access state funds and to communicate with our county judge and to communicate with our, the EDCs in Reynosa or in Mission or Edinburgh and Far, and to operate collaboratively in a regional context. I just think we could do amazing things here locally, and it's not just, I've said this over and over again, it's not just business for business sake, it's business there to improve people's lives and to to build in new opportunities, and then that just spreads out among the entire community. It's to the nonprofits and to those that are supporting affordable housing and Boys and Girls Club and every other organization that just needs to be supported from a charitable perspective. There's so much that we can access that
we're not accessing.
We're not currently accessing.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. I think that there's a lot of opportunity and there's a lot of potential in what could be, right? So if you had the magic wand, because we just talked about it earlier before we kind of started this thing was...
Yeah, I'm sorry I took over a little bit.
No, hey, the last time that you were in this building, it was because, we're trying to pass a bond for better schools because as McAllen kind of being the hub of a lot of the things that are happening, you don't want you don't want to become, McAllen ISD does not want to become an inner city school, so to speak. And that's kind of I don't mean to say it like it's like a negative connotation, but that's kind of what's familiar when you talk about inner city and that kind of thing. So, but there's been other initiatives too, right? Like, I think there was an initiative too about like having a really nice, tennis court kind of arena to be able to play, sports and quality of life and all that.
So the issue really that you're alluding to, right? I mean, there was a school bond and perhaps it wasn't run exactly the right way, and maybe they overreached a little bit or a lot. But the school district does need capital investment. We need to work through those things. The school board has its own, the school district, has its own board. They're going to decide on those things. But there are focused levels of capital investment that can be made and should be made. Our students deserve as good a facility as the others throughout the state, and we need to support our school district, and we need to make sure that there's a collaborative environment between our city and our school. And I've said before, I think currently there's a joint meeting between the city and the school every 3 or 4 months. That's unacceptable.
You think it needs to be...
If I'm elected, there will be some sort of city representative, whether it's an employee or an elected official, at every single school board meeting, so that the city knows what the school district is doing as they're doing it. The school board knows what the city is doing as they're doing it. The issues are so integral between them, right? When we're trying to recruit companies and people to town, almost the first question asked in every interview is, well, what is the school district like?
Right.
And we need to make sure that our school district is a district of choice for every company that is coming to town that we're trying to recruit. We're lucky to have Dr. Gonzalez, who's had enormous success and was a superintendent of the year. School board is doing a really wonderful job, but we do need to prove up additional capabilities and improvements in the capital environment where we can make it where our students can continue to succeed and compete on a state level. But it's important that we build those collaborations and make sure that we are the location that everyone wants to be at. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And first choice.
First choice in every regard. Mm-hmm. And we need to recruit companies that are going to be those that aren't companies of the past, but companies of the present and the future that are kind of on the cutting edge and that are going to be growing. And I've said time and time again, we need to find the Tesla and the next Tesla. Mm-hmm. We need to understand why is it that we should be the location to be able to bring those companies down. Mm-hmm. School districts do a great job. There's so much challenge though, because we can't just be pie in the sky. Mm-hmm. And part of what I also want to get back to and make sure that the city is supporting in whatever way we can is the vocational training, because those are proven jobs available as soon as students get out of school, whether it's electricians or plumbers or welders. There's so much opportunity there, and there has been, thankfully, progress where MISD and STC specifically, UTRGV a little bit, but the different school districts are focusing on those job-ready programs, and we need to support those, and we need to make sure if there's some help that we as a city can provide to our districts, educational districts, our educational partners, for those job-ready programs, we should be providing those. And at the same time, the UTRGV with the medical school and the research capabilities that they're bringing in, I mean, it's just enormous opportunities, and the city is in a unique environment to help promote.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like you've got a laundry list of things that you've got like a scroll.
I do. That's right.
Like all of this.
That's right. I know I overwhelmed you a little bit. I didn't mean to.
No, I
really
cool.
didn't mean to.
No. I mean, but that's great that you've got a lot of this foresight, and because like you were talking about before, you're coming in from different experiences where you went out, you ventured out, you saw other things, you experienced other things from a business perspective. You're dealing with Fortune 500 companies, franchises, and all of these things, small business, even from Mike's Man Shop, which, by the way, is that named after you?
So, unfortunately, my grandfather was Mike Fallek. He died the year before I was born, and that's the reason I was named after him. He died in 1970. I was born in 1971. So it was a year a year before, and that's where Mike's Man Shop came from.
When I go home, actually not my house, I do have a Mike's Man Shop. What do you call those things that you put over the suits?
The suit bag?
The little suit bag. I've got a Mike's Man Shop suit bag only because I took it from my dad because I was going to this vintage party, and my dad's got the slickest suits. And all of those slick, vintage, awesome suits, he still has them in the Mike's Man Shop bag.
Awesome.
I mean,
awesome.
like an entire row of them.
Excellent. I like
The next
that.
time I swing by my dad's place,
Perhaps,
I'm gonna go.
perhaps that paid for part of my tuition.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. But yeah, I mean that's awesome that you've got all of that history from the very small all the way up to all of the other things. I mean, I mean for me, you know, I've known you for a few years, and I think that in my humble opinion, you've always been the guy behind the guy. You've never really made a whole lot of like, you've been a very humble in a lot of the things that you all have been able to accomplish, you know, as a group and all of these things. So I think it's awesome. Like when I heard that you were doing this, I thought, man, that's great because you're able to bring all those experiences, and just to even hear how passionate you are and that you already have a vision and an idea of some of the things that you would like to be able to conquer first, you know, going through it all is really kind of awesome. So, but how did the conversation start? Like, how did you get into the, because that's a big,
it is. And I never, ever had any inclination to be jumping into the political arena. It's absolutely not something I was intending to do, but you know, sometimes when something is important enough, you jump,
right?
And you put whatever you have immediately in front of you on the back burner, because it's just important enough. And so that's what happened when Mayor Darling decided not to run, and I think he's really done a wonderful job as mayor. And then you look back at the history of the leaders running the city. We've been so lucky to have quality leadership in McAllen. And I was just concerned about the period of time that we're in, coming out of the pandemic. And I just thought it was so important that somebody from the business community come out to run the city. And that is the reason, because otherwise I wouldn't have. Because this really honestly is just difficult. But it's important enough that everything else is just going to have to wait a little bit while we get through this process. And I want to make sure that what was here in town ready for me and laid the path for my success, that I can then help lay the foundation for, to make sure that that same foundation is there for future generations. I think it is so important that we make sure that, you know, what was provided to us, that we are at least leaving in the same, or hopefully a much better environment for those that are following in our footsteps. And that's why I'm jumping into the race. It's only that's why I jumped into the race. It's only because I felt it was so important. This was such a crucial time, such a monumental time, that I'm like, I don't care that I only wanted to handle my business interests, and that I was focused on making sure my family was good, my employees were good, my family was in a great place. Sometimes you just have to go beyond what you're comfortable with and put yourself in a situation where it's not necessarily you have the right, you know, a dedicated path and a sure path to success, but you're putting yourself out there because you think it's important enough to do so. And this is kind of the way I think that I've led my life. And you know, going back where you and I first met in Leadership McAllen, when I was, I think I was program chair. I wasn't yet chairman of the organization. I was program chair, but I got so much out of that. I was in class 20. My mom was in class 1.
Wow.
Yeah. With other business partners, but she was in class 1, and my dad was involved on setting up MEDC, kind of way back then when that was being set up. And I've always felt that the Leadership McAllen program, which I was so happy you went through, and we got to be great friends through it. But it is so important to set the next generation of leaders capable and interested enough to spend the time to do what's right for our city, our community. And, it was just a wonderful organization. And actually, if you go and you look at any city board, any civic organization now, it is going to be stocked with Leadership McAllen alumni. And I think that it I think it's a testament to what was set in place all those years ago at a difficult time, when they set up that program. And I was just so thankful when I was here as a young professional before I really got involved in a lot of stuff and was able to go through the program in Class 20 and then as chairman of Class 30. And I think they're on 41 now.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And I think it's just important to pass it forward.
Yeah. You have to.
I in whatever it is that I do, I am hopeful to leave something better than I found it. And I hope that I can always say that about whatever it is that I'm involved in.
Well, if you are doing all of the block walking, because I spoke to you a couple of weeks ago, you're doing all the block walking, you're walking 10 miles a day, you're doing a lot of stuff, and you're doing it at a point where your daughter is making decisions on her own on the same day, you are definitely you're doing things for the greater good, and going for mayor and running for mayor is, I would imagine, kind of a little scary. You're putting yourself out there, but they always say, like, it's definitely a courageous thing to do, because courage is not another thing that I read one time was courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is having the fear, but going through with it, and because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
And so I mean that's definitely a big.
Well, I appreciate you saying, but I don't need any of that, right? And
I'm not trying to blow smoke.
Right. I don't care anything about that. I just want what's best for our community, and hopefully, with the level of support that I've been given, and the buy-in that I feel like I can drive the different community activists and the different stakeholders in our community, I think we can do great things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so going back into like your family and kind of all of the things for the people that don't know, Mike's Man Shop, you all have
MEDC.
MEDC, all of these things that you all have been like. Where did your family? Because it's been 90 years, so
yeah. So they came down here. My grandparents came down here during the Great Depression because these were just where jobs were, and thankfully they kind of made their way entrepreneurial all along. And I'm just continuing that tradition really. But my grandfather and my grandmother were just. From what I hear about my grandfather, because I didn't know him, just a great person, and then my grandmother, thankfully I got to spend quite a bit of my childhood with her, and she was alive all through that period of time and through my education. And every time I'd come home from school, that would be the first stop, would be to go see Lily. Just a great resource. And then my mom and dad have just been just wonderful role models, and I'm trying to do that for my kids as well. But the point was to make our way and then to also build what we could along that path. And so we've continued to build new businesses. We invest, we reinvest here, we headquarter here. Like I said, we've had 500-600 employees at a time, but everything is locally based, and we build all through the state, but it's still all being run out of McAllen, and we try to promote from within. I think pretty much every general manager of each of our various businesses. At one point was
Started at the bottom.
started as an hourly that made their way through the system. I'm thankful to have wonderful, almost all, actually, strangely enough, almost all female managers and CFO in our organization, and that doesn't matter either, right? It's always just on qualification. It shouldn't be gender based. It shouldn't be race based. It's on qualifications, but we promote based on ability. And how wonderful is it to be able to deal with the same people that really I started with here in McAllen 20 plus years ago that are in our organization. I think the great majority of all of our managers have been with us for 15 plus years, and we get to see their families and their success, and it's really gratifying.
Yeah, I mean, you have to take care of the people that take care of you,
and thank goodness that they do, because I couldn't tell you how to run a hotel or how to check in a guest. I set the overall vision and path, but thank goodness we have qualified, wonderful people that care and that are supremely competent at their jobs, making it easier on the rest of us. Yeah.
So if you had a magic wand and you could do whatever you wanted, you become the mayor of McAllen. What do? What's McAllen look like?
I get out there, and hopefully I set a positive vision for those that are working hard every day here in our community. First off, right? Police and fire, code enforcement, water and sewer, keep McAllen beautiful.
Foundational institutions.
The blocking and tackling of city workings, so that everybody knows that their lives are just going to work here in McAllen. That the drainage is going to be functional. That we're going to fix the mobility issues. We're working on the synchronization of the traffic lights. We're connecting stormwater systems into the county and then into the state systems to get the water out of our community with when storms inundate us with water, that trash is picked up, that brush is picked up. The actual workings are always going to continue, and that the citizens don't have to worry about tax increases in order to pay for those. And then on top of that, at the same time we're doing that, we need to be focusing on long-term vision and how it is that we can improve our society, our city, for the long term. And it's not just McAllen. We're always going to look at McAllen first, but really McAllen has to be the leader in our entire region. As McAllen goes, our region goes. And we're going to work collaboratively with our partners, but we're going to look out for McAllen first. And there's just enormous possibilities at our disposal. And we're going to collaboratively improve our region so that everybody is benefiting. And we're going to solve those those long-term problems, the economic issues, little by little, and improve the quality of lives and the opportunities of our people here. When one of the questions that was asked recently on one of the forums I was at, right, because it's just
nonstop,
one forum after another, which is great. You have to reach out to each of the individual constituencies that are out there. But I was asked, what is the legacy you want to leave? And the legacy that I want to leave is simply, I want to make people's lives better. At the end of the day, when I'm if I'm elected and when I'm out of office, when people are thinking back, well, what did you think? And it's like, yeah, he left things much better for us than when he started. And my life is better for the opportunities that are present because Michael was in office.
Right. Yeah. And I think when you look at any leader, specifically like presidential, it's the transformative leaders that really are the ones that are really identified as like, man, that guy really just like.
It'd be wonderful to have resources that a president has.
Well,
we don't have all those available to us. We're going to have to figure, and focus on those issues that we can control. But we will do that to the best of our ability.
Let me ask you something that's kind of like off topic, but it's always been kind of in the back of my mind personally is like, if you take all of the population of people on this side of the border, South Padre Island because RGV is from east to west anyway. South Padre Island, Rio Grande City. Is that kind of a fair, right? How many people are on this side?
So, I mean, first off, what I'm going to tell you is...
Do you know where I'm going with this?
Don't even limit it to that, right? Because you have on the other side of the border so many more people. And the challenge that I've had and that I feel like I've been able to communicate in my private life on real estate development is incorporating, the 700,000 people that are in Reynosa on the other side of the border. When I deal with demographics that you share with companies discussing whether to move into our region, they only look at the actual U.S. MSAs.
Right.
And first, there's two components to that. First off, we haven't combined MSAs, which we have the ability to do, and to really make a mark similar to how the MPOs thankfully finally gathered so that we could make a case to the state transportation authorities for more dollars coming into our region. All of a sudden we have such greater access to state dollars for infrastructure, and thank goodness the MPOs finally combined, and kudos to the different stakeholders that did that. McAllen, Mission, Edinburgh, Farr, Hidalgo, Cameron County, kudos to them for finally passing that mark. We also need to do that in terms of forming MSAs so that we can operate and sell ourselves to companies and state and federal communities about the number of people and the spending power that we have here locally to attract more business. That's the second thing. And then the next level is somehow convincing, because I'm going to do this in conversations anyway, but getting some kind of official count on the number of people, right? If you take a circle and you just draw a circle around a point, and it doesn't end at the border.
Right. It keeps going.
Every company that's looking at our region to incorporate here and to set up new businesses, they do a semicircle. and they don't take into account all this population that's on the south side of the border. And they'll tell you how they form, this radius on how they're looking at what the population and the spending possibility is. They take a diameter, and I was like, yeah, but you're cutting it off. I mean, that's only a semicircle. What are you talking about? So you have all this spending power, and that's not even saying anything about Monterey, which we know brings so much spending into our community, but it's just too far away. And so that's never going to come into our MSA. But you ought to be able to at least incorporate the spending power and the population on Reynosa to communicate that to potential companies, to companies potentially looking at investing and locating here. I'm going to continue to communicate that message, but the ability to somehow get that into official reporting that can be blasted out nation or worldwide as to what our actual population and spending power is here locally, that's a challenge, and we will figure it out. But even if we don't, I'm still going to be talking about it.
Right.
And if I'm in a position to get in front of those companies, I will be harping on it, and I will make sure that they understand what the actual numbers are. And then we just, on top of that, because of the COVID challenge, the pandemic challenge, my God, we just need to get these bridges open.
Yeah.
And
it's a
huge issue, and it's affecting our overall economy. And we're past the point where those bridges should have been open, and we got to get them open. And we have this wonderful infrastructure to enable our community to succeed, but we're hamstrung because the federal government hasn't yet listened closely enough to our local community to say, yeah, you're right. We should reopen. But we got to make that happen sooner rather than later.
There's always been this sort of quality of life issue. And when you talk about businesses and businesses coming in, a lot of their major concerns are like, okay, well, we're going to bring all of these people from other areas. Those people, whether they're in the workforce or they're the workforce spouses or whoever they are, they look at schools and they look at quality of life. So, like, what are your thoughts on what's an improvement that we can make?
So, you're talking about the whole package, really, is what you're talking about. And I think that's the right question to be asking. And the majority of my conversations have been about setting a business environment that makes it where we've got a cost-controlled, low-tax environment, but we're taking care at the same time. We're taking care of all of the standard quality of life issues. I've said before, time and time again, the streets and the police and fire and infrastructure, all that stuff. Make sure that works, and we've got an environment that is pro-business to allow for growth within our community, job opportunities, career paths. But we all know that the other social components are so important to make it worthwhile to live in a community. It's not just go to work, come home, go to work, come home. We have to make it where you really are proud of where you live and you enjoy living in your environment. And so much of that has been historically a productive conversation here in McAllen. We've taken perhaps a little bit of a step back, as most communities have through the pandemic. And there are challenges here, just like there are challenges everywhere. But we need to make sure that we've got the environment, first off, for the businesses to succeed, so that we've got great restaurants that we love to go to. We've got the theaters, we've got the grocery stores, we've got the wonderful Performing Arts Center, which I think has been an absolute home run for the city, and I applaud the city for building that facility. But there are other opportunities that we have. One thing that we have really lost out on that I think people have forgotten about are the wonderful cultural events that we used to have in the Civic Center in McAllen.
Yeah.
I can recall and just loved at every single opportunity the quarterly beef syndicates.
Yeah.
The Rotary Oktoberfest and crawfish boils that happened in our community
I love
each
the
year.
crawfish boil.
The Junior League Dias Festivos that went on for a week every year during the holiday season. And the other events that would happen in our civic center that just brought the entire community together. I can recall those things, and they brought the community together. You know, north and south, east, west. You would see people at the Beef Syndicate that you would only see at those events, but it would bring such connectivity throughout the entire community that you would feel like, man, I really belong in this community. I see all these people that, even though we have zero interaction on an occupational level,
Right.
the fact that we can get together socially at least once a quarter, and at these other events even more so, in this communal space, I think it was enormously important, and we lost that when we made the decision to knock down our civic center, build the convention center. Now, we all know that building that convention center activated that entire western part of the city, and there was a ton of capital investment and real estate development that happened out there, and it was good for the entire city. And it created additional taxable value on our rolls, and the convention center has been a source where we can bring in business from outside the community, but it has left a void in the community activity that we used to have that would bring us together. So one of the things that I have been thinking about as I've been running for office here as mayor is, number one, either tweak the real focus of the convention center so that there is more of a community focus, and it may be incompatible. It just may be incompatible because the point of the convention center was to bring in outside dollars. Right. And we need to be able to do that. We need to be able to open that space and hold it so that we get conventions from elsewhere. But it is a very expensive space. And what has happened over the years is that it priced out our local community. And those events that used to happen that would bring our entire community together have disappeared. How wonderful would it be to bring back that quarterly beef syndicate, to have the Dias Festivos marketplace happen every single holiday season, have the Rotary have their events here in our city each year. I do think there's an opportunity to look at a new civic center, a pure civic center that is focused solely on our community, that can just be a very simple space. We need to build of a size that can handle the amount of people that we would want to bring together, but wouldn't be of such a price that would make it difficult for our local charitable organizations to host events. We could look at that, and how wonderful would it be to be able to bring back those community events, those organizations that meant so much to all of us, and replicate those experiences that we used to have. Now, of course, it's got to fit into the budget, and if it doesn't, then we need to find grants or other sponsors that are going to pay for the new center. But it is one thing that I think that we ought to be looking at that nobody has really been talking about, because it just kind of lost top of mind discussion points. But I think that there is so much value in bringing our community together and bringing in people from, like I said before, all parts of the city to come in together and to just get to intermingle and enjoy each other. It's a huge possibility that is something no one's really talking about, but I think that can ultimately improve the quality of life of our entire community.
Yeah, and I think that going into that, the convention center was built with a purpose, like you said. Bring in outside dollars, bring in outside conventions, and I think that was one of those things where you almost lost sight of all of those other deals. So what you're talking about is formulating a new space to be able to have to create a new space for those community events to live in, as opposed to, hey, having these community events fit into whatever the convention center
That may not work
do.
because that wasn't the focus.
Right. It's a square peg in a round hole, or whatever.
That's right.
Whatever
that's
that
exactly
is.
right. Yeah.
And so to be able to say, okay, well, here's this other opportunity. Let's create a brand new space that this portion of the community can live in.
That the community can appreciate and enjoy and be proud of, and that we can celebrate those that want to volunteer for different organizations, and that can create this, energy and collaboration within our own community.
Well, and when you look at some of the larger metropolitan areas, you look at like San Antonio and some of our kind of sister cities in the state per se. There's a convention center. There's another center. There's one arena. There's two arenas. I mean, going into San Antonio, there was the Alamo Dome, and the Alamo Dome was too big to fit the Spurs. It was originally kind of meant for all things.
Yeah,
but
so that one was its own mess. I don't want to get into that one per se, but I mean we have areas where land price is such that we could develop a very simple but large space to host these events that I think the community would get enormous value out of. And at some level, you take such pride in the community events that we get to experience communally, and we ought to celebrate that, and we ought to celebrate the successes that we can have internally in our own city, and that have been such a huge part of kind of our history that I don't want to see disappear.
Right.
I mean, we haven't had, for instance, a Dias Festivos for the last couple of years, but I don't necessarily want that to disappear completely, because those were such great times. Now, we need to have an advisory group, and that's all I'm proposing is put a group together to study the issue, to meet with the different stakeholders that were producing those events, to see if they could be replicated if we had created a space that could hold them.
Right.
I mean, I'm not in favor of building something that is any sort of white elephant. The point is to create a space that our community can come together as we always used to do, quarterly, semi-annually, annually, but that would build such value and such pride across the city, just within our own community. And I think there's just enormous value potentially in that. But as I said, it's got to fit within the financial structure that we have in front of us.
And trying to find a way to make it work.
You have to make it work.
Right.
Otherwise, there's no value in it. But I do think that we can go out and we can find a way to make sure that it does function economically.
Right.
And I think that anybody that's listening to this, they're going to think back to how great a time they used to have at all these different events, and getting to see people from, the other side of town that they only would see at, the quarterly Beef Syndicate, or whatever the case may be at each of those. And there were, individual family events that, could also happen at this city venue. But it is an interesting, I think it's an interesting idea. And I think we just ought to be looking at new things out in our community and at least envisioning what might be.
Explore the idea.
Now, it may not work, right? But let's think about it. Let's kick it around and make sure that it either works or it doesn't work. But if you don't even have it as a thought process,
then it'll never be.
Never be. And we ought to engage the conversation.
Right.
Because there used to be such great value and such great memories that we all made through these interpersonal connections that we would have at these communal events. And I think if we all think back to what we have had in the past, we might harken back to those ideas and think, wow, that could be just a really great thing for the future of McAllen.
Yeah, and to build something that isn't in opposition of or in competition with, but complementary to what already currently exists. So it's to say, hey, here's a particular venue, let's just say, here's a particular venue where you can't do it in this venue, but you could do it in this venue.
Yeah.
And it's not to say like, well, you're going to pin them against each other, but
I mean, they're really they're incompatible with each other.
Right.
The convention center priced out all of our charitable organizations. Now, it might just be that's just the way it was, right? You had to hold it open for these outside events because they were going to be bringing money into the community, and you wanted to make sure that that was possible. And so to some degree they were incompatible. But let's at least look and see whether we might be able to make this work.
Right. It's worth the exploration to see if it's
And so I just want to make sure that the message out there is communicated that I'm as focused on our interpersonal connections and our quality of life as it is on the business community and the actual functioning of the city and the economic drivers that pay for it all. Because ultimately, right, we want to make sure that the economic drivers and the functioning society are there not just to live, but to actually enjoy being a part of this community and living here and being proud of living here and getting to enjoy our families and the connectivity we have with our friends. Thank God we've got great friends.
Yeah.
And how we can really just appreciate this as an entire community.
Right. And I think progress, the ability to progress beyond doing what we're already familiar with, which is kind of something that you said like at the beginning, is to create that progress and to also kind of create that change, because I've got family that doesn't that they've moved. They've moved away and it's always nice to hear them when they come in. And the one thing that they really enjoy is definitely kind of the camaraderie and it's even some of the nostalgia of it all. But what's really impressive to them is when they get to see progress. Like, hey, I didn't know that La Plaza Mall had that, or I didn't know that this actually existed, or wow, this is really interesting. So to make sure that there's always something that's fresh and that's new and that's giving something back to the city. That sounds like a good idea, man. I hope it at least, I hope it, that actually kind of comes to fruition in the way of exploring the idea, because even if it's just to kick off the conversation, it could lead into something even better. than what you had originally
the
envisioned.
point,
Who knows?
The point is to engage a community in the conversation.
Right.
Right. I mean, I shouldn't be the one that's coming up with all the ideas and necessarily setting the be all end all. It's about engaging a community in a communication in a conversation where we can participate in it and actually create value and come up with what works.
Right.
Because we've got enormous mental capacity here, and we ought to be able to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And let's activate that. And let's figure it out so that we all can be just proud of the community that we live in.
Right. Because you have the ability to create change. Everybody really does if they participate, which is kind of the reason that you got into this race in the first place.
Yeah, but you want to have a government where you are activating the populace to be participatory in the entire process, so that those best thoughts can come out of it, and we can figure out how to make it all work. Because government doesn't always have the right decisions and ideas. It can come from the populace, and that's where so much of the value can be derived. And we need to make sure that communication is an open door. And again, let's just figure it out. But I think that we ought to be encouraging that communication.
Right.
And
somebody's got to get the conversation started.
So for so long, it just hasn't even been a conversation point. And I don't understand why it hasn't even been a conversation point.
And
Because,
it needs to be.
I mean, if anyone that is listening to this thinks back to how much we all enjoyed all those events that we would get together about, I mean, it's just, that's the good stuff.
Right.
That's the good stuff about living.
That's the happiness part that we talked about at the beginning of the whole.
That's kind of the whole point is
right.
Enjoy your lives together. And for sure, we have to be fiscally responsible. But the point is then to utilize that in a way that we can all be proud of and enjoy where we live.
And create new life experiences that may have
and connections,
not otherwise
and
existed.
personal connections. Yeah.
So, you've had quite a lot of success in a lot of the business ventures and things that you have, or that you participate in. Like, what would you say, how much of that was luck and how much of that was sort of by design?
Yeah. So, that's an excellent question. This is going back, pretty deep, right? When you're asking that. And I've been lucky to be in the environment that I've been in, and lucky to have had the foundation that I've had. But every single decision that I've made and every single risk that I've taken, right? Because every new business that I've created, and I've created 35 different businesses. The foundation of that is the homework and the due diligence that goes into each one of those. And the analysis and homework, by the time we pull the trigger on any individual project, we've just beaten it to death. And there's, hundreds and thousands of hours that have gone into those studies. And so I feel like, to answer your question, I'm lucky in the opportunities that I've been given, but I put everything at risk into every single project that I commit to. Sign personal guarantees on every project. I'm going to make sure that I feel like each one of them is at the optimal level and has the greatest chances of success, because I'm putting my individual money and stake at risk.
Right.
And it will never be that whatever it is that I put myself behind, whether it's my own personal businesses or the city's, none of those decisions will be made without that same level of scrutiny and same level of homework and due diligence and sleepless nights thinking about,
Is this the right?
positive, negative, is this the right thing to do, to get back to your question? And I've been through that process over and over again. I will engage that in every decision. It's mind-numbing, and it's tiring, and it's exhausting, but it's the right thing to do. And it will always be the same process that I engage in moving forward with every decision that is being made.
So with all of that, all of those decisions, you were talking about this kind of new idea and going back to the good stuff about life, right? The good stuff about life is connections, people, support, family, friends.
I mean, isn't that what you remember, really? When you go back through it, when you're cycling through in your mind, what is it that you recall? You recall your connections with people. And that's what I want to make sure that in our community we're setting up as a recipe for success is those
Opportunities.
Those opportunities, thank you, and those connections. Because without those, the rest of it is just
Transactional life crap.
just vanilla, right? And it's just
Yeah.
it's just
Get
something
up,
you got to get to,
go to work.
between the time you get up in the morning and you go to sleep at night. But no, let's have these events where, oh my God, I remember that time.
That was a good time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But we're going to make sure that the financial side is taken care of. And I don't want anyone out there in the community to have to worry about the financial side. That's what the elected leaders are going to be there for, and that's what the professionals that are hired at City Hall are there for, are to make sure that the financial component is taken care of, and that the people that are living here, don't have to think a thought about that. They're just going to go out and enjoy the experience.
Right. And
how wonderful would that be?
that would be awesome.
Yeah.
To be able to put people in a position for ultimate prosperity, whether that be quality of life or financial opportunities.
Just to be proud of the community in which they live.
Like, I'm from McAllen, and McAllen kicks ass.
Let me tell you what we just had. And they don't even have to worry about how it was being paid for, because our elected leaders are going to figure it out and make sure that it was all done appropriately.
Right.
And that nobody had to worry about increased taxes to take care of it. It was within the realm in which we're all living.
Right. Within the scope and the allocation of funds to make it work.
Yeah. And we're just going to be open and transparent about it. We're not going to worry about any freedom of information requests, because we're just going to be open about it. And we're going to share what the costs are. And we're going to be out there. And if anyone has a question, we're just going to answer it.
Right. Right.
Because you hear so much about, the different communities and the hiding and whatever. I mean, I don't really want to get, it's a negative conversation.
Right. But I mean, but they're out there.
But it is important. It is important. But the point is to be open and transparent about it. And let's just all recognize whatever it's going to be and make a decision. It's either worth it or it's not worth it. And let's be open and honest about it as a community.
So kind of treating to me, it sounds kind of like treating the financials just like you would your personal finances, right? You got to make sure that before you go out and do these things to enhance your quality of life, like vacations and things like that, you got to make sure that your bills are paid. You got to make sure that you're doing all the right things. You got to make sure that your family's taken care of. You got to make sure that the mortgage and all of the things are in place. And then, hey, if you have extra money and you can afford to do it, enhance the quality of life.
I didn't even have to answer it. I mean, you already answered it.
Yeah.
I think that's tremendous.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Just handle it that way.
Maybe I don't need to run. Maybe you
No,
can,
no,
maybe
I
you
would
can
never.
run.
I would never.
No, you take it. You take it, Jerry Sanchez.
No,
you take
man.
it.
You are a noble person, man, and I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate you coming in and doing this, man. I just really feel like if more people kind of knew where you were coming from. You're coming from a very noble place, and you're doing things with all the right intentions, and that I think definitely needs to be shared with the community. I
appreciate you saying that, and it is true. And I'm only here for the best interest of the city. I'm only here because I'm from here. I intend to be living here. We are raising our family here, and I care so much about the community that we are living in, and I want what's best for us all. And that's that's it. I have nothing to gain other than being proud from where we are, and want to make the best of it for all of us that live here.
So let me ask you one final question.
Final question.
Yeah, before we kind of wrap it all up.
All right.
If you could give life advice to somebody who's, they want to get involved in the community, they want to see their business succeed. You are an entrepreneur. You are many, many things. Good family man. You come from a wonderful family. You've got a wonderful family. What sort of life advice would you say for anybody who's looking for a little bit of direction?
So that's easy. It's get involved, put yourself out there, commit to those organizations and those causes that you feel personally worthwhile to make your community a better place to live. That's all that I've done. And you got to make sure that your business side is working, whether it's just your 9-to-5 job, or if you're an entrepreneur, that your business is going to have enough time dedicated to it and that you're going to make it succeed. But whatever time it is that you have to give it to your community. Mm-hmm. Make the connections with your fellow man, your fellow woman. You're gonna you have your thought about making your community a better place to live. And if you do that, you will be a success in life.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think that if somebody thinks to themselves, I've got this really great idea, or really want to be able to, like, why is this change not happening? It's probably because they're not the ones that are being involved. So it's like, well, if not you, then who? If not now, then when? Right? And I think you've asked yourself,
you're ready for the national stage, Jerry Sanchez.
No, man, I'm just saying, like, to me, when I look at what you've done and what you're currently doing, I mean, it's hard not to look at kind of what you're doing and how you're going about it, and you're doing it in such a really great way to where you asked yourself those questions. You had to have asked yourself those questions, and it's not just like you thought about it and said, well, I don't know, but it's not me. I mean, you actually said, like, you know what?
This is the time.
This is it.
There are going to be trade-offs and there's going to be sacrifices, but at the end of the day, it's worthwhile for our community. And this is the time that I need to make this personal sacrifice to give for the betterment of what I feel is my home and my community.
I agree, man. I
Yeah.
appreciate you stepping up, man.
All right,
and,
baby.
and doing it.
All right.
So
All right.
I appreciate your time,
Yes,
man.
sir.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
And cheers. Best of luck, man,
care.
on the campaign trail.
Thanks so much for doing this with me.
Yeah, man. Thank you.